At wagon level, nearby farmers, they pull up in their wagons with their quart jars and jugs. The Burks will come out and they fill it directly from the barrel. That building is on the National Registry. It's the oldest standing packaged liquor store in the U.S. The warehouse across the street, that's the oldest and smallest warehouse on site. It dates back to the 1850s. You know, back in the 1850s, those guys, they had to hoist those barrels up by hand. So 3 floors was as high as it could go. That warehouse can hold about 4,000 barrels of whiskey. The ones up on the hill when you pull it in, they can hold 20,000. And then last year, Maker's Mark built 3 in Loretto that can hold 50,400 barrels. But we only fill them 2/3 full because we roll the barrels by hand. When we go into that warehouse, I'll show you how they roll the barrels. And then the greenhouse up on the hill, it was built by the Burks in 1898. The Samuel family bought the home in the 1960s. That's our clubhouse today. That's where we host a lot of our big events. Decided that he wanted to reinvent the bourbon recipe. He wanted to make something that was smooth and sweet. The reason why he was attracted to this distillery out in the middle of nowhere is because of our water. 95% of the world's bourbon comes from Kentucky because of our water. In Kentucky, we sit on a limestone shelf. It filters out the iron and it adds calcium. Maker's Mark, we have a 10-acre lake here on site. It's a natural limestone spring-fed lake. You had the water, you had the distillery, you need the right recipe. He created the Maker's Mark recipe by baking bread. Baking bread and making whiskey, they're very similar. You're going to use yeast grains and water. Now, to be a bourbon whiskey, there's 6 federal guidelines to follow. It has to be made in America. B, it has to be aged in a new oak charred barrel. So we only use our barrels one time. C, you have to use at least 51% corn in your mash. I showed you guys we use 70%. D, the whiskey can't be distilled no higher than 160 proof. Ours comes off the still the highest at 130. E, the whiskey can't enter the barrel no higher than 125 proof. And then F, you can't use any additives to change the flavor. Like Jack Daniels. Jack Daniels is a Tennessee sipping whiskey. When that whiskey comes out of the barrel, they run it through maple chips or maple ricks. That's called the Lincoln County process. That's the only guideline that makes Jack Daniels a Tennessee sipping whiskey instead of a bourbon whiskey.
What about moonshine?
Now, moonshine, I mean, anybody can make. Moonshine is just grain alcohol. I mean, well, it doesn't even have to be grain alcohol. I mean, it can just straight alcohol. So I mean, like a lot of people make moonshine around here. They use apples, bananas. Yeah. So I mean, it's just. We're gonna taste some of that in a minute. We're making the barrel. So we only use our barrels one time. Independence. bottle, and then we're going to sell it in the gift shop as a novelty. You can only buy this in the gift shop. You can't get it anywhere else. At this point, just using water. Okay, it's just diluted. Just diluted.
Can we take it across state lines?
At this point, you can call this a whiskey. This is called a bourbon-eligible distilled spirit. Raw whiskey, unaged, Maker's Mark. Only get it here. All right, now you're going to taste it. Before you taste it, there's 3 things that you need to do that'll help prepare you for what you're going to taste. First thing you do is you look at the color. Of course, it looks like water because it's never been put in the barrel. Then you're going to look at the nose. Now, when you nose whiskey, it's a little bit different from smelling. What you're going to do is take your glass, swirl it around, put your nose in the glass, and then breathe in with your mouth.
Fire.
That helps you pick up a lot more flavor. At this point, it's very grainy, it's very corny. A lot of people compare it to a tequila. Alright, now you're going to taste it. Whenever you're tasting, I want you to think about your tongue. Bitter taste buds are in the back of the tongue, sweets at the very tip, sours on the sides. Taste it, roll it over your tongue, think about where it sits. Now you should feel it on the back and the sides of the tongue. It's raw whiskey, it's very sour, it's very bitter. If you have a very sensitive palate, you may feel it like a pinprick at the tip of the tongue, and then it's going to hit about right here. Alright, that's the Maker's White. It's 90 proof. Alright, the next thing we're going to taste.
She's trying to get us drunk.
Alright, the next thing we're going to taste, this is your regular, fully matured Maker's Mark. Now, another guideline to be a bourbon whiskey is the whiskey can't enter the barrel no higher than 125 proof. So we'll take the 130 proof White Dog, cut it down to 110, age in the barrel 5 to 7 years, and then we again dilute it down to 90 and put it in the bottle. That's when you get your regular Maker's Mark. The color comes from the char inside the barrel. The nose on this one, if you nose it, you're going to pick up a lot of caramel, vanilla, fruitiness, all that. It comes from the wood. How that whiskey extracts and contracts in and out of the barrel. When you char a barrel, you caramelize the wood. That's where you're getting that good caramel nose. Now taste it, roll it over your tongue. Notice where this one sits on the tongue.
What are you diluting it with?
Just using water. Deionized water. Deionized water. Now you should feel this one at the very tip of the tongue. Since we use wheat, wheat's a sweet grain, that taste is going to linger toward your sweet taste buds, then it creates a really smooth finish in the back of your palate. Alright, that's Maker's Mark. It's 90 proof. Alright, the next thing we're going to taste, this is what we call over-matured Maker's Mark. Now, we don't sell this. We keep this in our tasting room to show you the reason why we don't sell it. Reason you.
Beware.
This is okay. I'm just joking. This is what we have. This is actually a 9-year-old Maker's Mark, and the only reason why we make this is the big misconception in the bourbon industry is the longer that whiskey's aged in the barrel, the better that it gets. You know, if you go into a liquor store, you see 10-year-old, 20-year-old, 30-year-old whiskey, it's very expensive. You assume it's expensive, it's got to be better, right? Well, a lot of people, they see that, and then they come to us, and they ask us, how come you're not aging your whiskey any longer? Well, we aged this 9 years to show you that Maker's Mark is not going to get any better the longer that it sits in the barrel. Maker's Mark, in our recipe, we use soft red winter wheat, which is a very delicate grain. The longer that whiskey ages in the barrel, the tannic acid from the wood overpowers the wheat, and that whiskey becomes bitter. Now, this is, like I said, aged 9 years. If you look at the 9-year-old and regular, it's a lot darker because it's been in the barrel almost 3 years longer.
Tastes like Jim Beam.
Now, nose it. Any of you folks drink scotch? Scotch drinkers here? These scotch drinkers? Scotch drinkers like it. If you nose it, it has a nose like a scotch. It's been in the barrel with the wood a lot longer. He said more of those wood characteristics like Scotch. Now taste it. Roll it over your tongue. Notice where this one sits on the tongue.
Right.
And sides. It's going to move to the back and the sides of the tongue. Almost like the first one that you tasted. Kind of sit where your side and your better taste buds are. Not a bad thing. Not a bad whiskey. It's just not the Samuel's legacy. When they created Maker's Mark in the 50s, they wanted a smooth, sweet sipping bourbon that sits at the tip of the tongue. This moves to the back and the sides. And that's why we don't sell it. That's why we don't age it anymore. Alright, and the last thing we're going to taste is the Maker's 46. This is, like I said, same recipe as Maker's Mark. Then we're going to age it the same way. After we finish aging it 5 to 7 years, we take the whiskey out of the barrel. We insert 10 French oak seared staves into the barrel. Put the whiskey back in the barrel and we age it 10 weeks longer. By adding those staves, it's going to give that whiskey a different finish. French oak has more vanillins in it, so it's going to give it a sweeter, almost a sweeter taste, but it's going to have a spicy finish to it. French oak, when Bill Drew was creating this product, he knew he didn't want to change his father's recipe, so he decided to experiment with wood. He hired a wood chef. The wood chef had 123 different wood profiles that they experimented with, and profile 46 was the one that liked the best, which was 10 French oak seared steaks. So they experimented with different ones. If you nose it, the nose is actually a lot sweeter. You can pick up a lot more vanilla because of the vanillins in the wood. Taste it, roll it over your tongue. Notice where this one sits on the tongue. This one's going to sit not only at the tip of the tongue, it's all over the front of the mouth. It's at the tip, the sides, and even tingles on your lips. That tingling sensation is going to sit around a lot longer than the Maker's Mark. Then it creates a really smooth finish in the back of the palate.